Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to follow up on this questioning to begin with. Just as I mentioned in my opening statement, the Coast Guard Academy's handling of the sexual assault allegations in the 1990s is deplorable, unacceptable, and can't happen again. The fact that the organization knew that this had happened years ago but didn't tell anyone is also unacceptable. Admiral, I want to commend you for your June 30th message to all Coast Guard members. I'd like to submit that for the record.
Without objection.
And one of the things that you mentioned in that message to all Coast Guard members is that, and I think this is important, the investigation occurred between 1988 and 2006. Is that correct?
Sexual assaults were not being appropriately handled at the Coast Guard Academy when they were reported.
And then importantly, in the statement and in your statement today, and even in the questioning you just answered from the chair, you mentioned over the past several years we have made major improvements to our policies regarding sexual assault, and you list a number of them. I'm not going to have you list them all here, but I think that's important for people to understand that in the last several years you have made important strides. Can you commit to the committee as part of this hearing to submit for the record a very detailed listing of all of these major improvements? I'm not going to have you do it now, but I do think it's important for the committee and more importantly for members of the Coast Guard to know that and have confidence in that. Can I get your commitment to do that? As just consider that a detailed question for the record here.
Yeah, I commit to providing all of that to the committee.
As much detail as possible. Let me ask again, on the issue of the prosecution of sexual assault and sexual harassment out of the chain of command, as you know, that issue has been something we have been debating on the Armed Services Committee, on which I sit for almost a decade. I want to commend Senator Gillibrand in particular for her leadership on that. Has the Coast Guard undertaken similar actions, and were you required to by law, or was that another instance where the DOD had something different from the Coast Guard, but you've done it anyways? Your statement mentions that you're doing it, but I'd like to know the legal and statutory basis for doing that, and how is that going?
So the National Defense Authorization Act that required the stand-up of the special prosecuting attorney offices applied to the Department of Defense, not us. We have moved.
Not you.
It did not apply to us. We have moved to do exactly that. We have, last year we selected a one-star admiral. That office is being stood up in Portsmouth, Virginia. We're staffing it. This year it will be up and fully functional and provide complete alignment with the intent with regard to appropriate handling of sexual assault cases in the military. And it's been a significant effort, but it's exactly where we need to be as a service to ensure that we're taking reports of sexual assault seriously and that they're being appropriately adjudicated and prosecuted within the UCMJ. So
you did that even though you weren't required to under the law the way the Department of Defense was?
We did it because it's the right thing to do to ensure as a military service that we're meeting the needs of our members.
I think, Madam Chair, it's an issue we should probably look at whether or not we need to legislate just to establish that the way the other services have done. And then one more thing, and I think it's very important, and I know you've already said it, but it's really important for this committee. Can I get your assurances that this type of investigation will never again be withheld from the Congress?
Yeah, I fully commit that the not reporting this investigation is inconsistent with my commitment to transparency, my respect for the oversight that this committee appropriately exercises over the organization. I am committed to bringing the organization forward and ensuring that we've got the appropriate culture of transparency and accountability and are responsive to the committee.
Thank you. Let me turn to another topic that you and I have talked a lot about that I know matters to you. It certainly matters to me. It matters to our country, and that's the Polar Security Cutter acquisition program, the commercially available icebreaker to fill the gap. This is an issue that I think every American should care about, whether you live in Florida or Texas or Alaska. We are an Arctic nation, as I mentioned. The Russians currently have over 50 icebreakers and are building more. 50. Some of which are nuclear powered, many of which have serious weapons on them. And we have 2, and 1 is broken. I think we have less icebreakers in Singapore, and they're near the equator. This is just completely unacceptable. My time has expired, but Madam Chair, I do want to just ask, and I'll follow up in the second round of questioning. Admiral, you've been a strong supporter of both of these programs. Can you give me an update first on the Polar Security Cutter acquisition lags that we are seeing and what we are expecting in terms of the building of our own Polar Security Cutters? And perhaps I'll leave to the second round of questioning the commercially available issue that you and I have worked on. And again, I appreciate the Coast Guard working so hard to get that in the President's budget again. It was in the President's budget last year and somehow got removed at the end of the omnibus, which still rankles me. But on the lag time on the building of the Polar Security Cutters.
So thank you. We're committed to the Polar Security Cutter and that contract. We're an Arctic nation. It is critical to our national security. And we continue to engage in the Joint Program Office with the Navy to ensure that we field that critical capacity and capability for the nation. The shipyard that the contract was awarded to was recently purchased and is now owned by Bollinger, Mississippi. We're working with the owner on accelerating detailed design, understanding what and definitizing the schedule and any implications with regard to new cost estimates. I was at that yard just a few weeks ago. They've welded a test coupon. I am confident we are going to begin building that ship as we go into the next calendar year, early in the next calendar year. It'll be at least a 4-year project to build that ship, and I understand that puts Deep Freeze 2028 potentially at risk, but we continue to engage with the shipyard and with the leadership there to accelerate into the work that is critical to getting that ship building begun and then fielding and executing it on behalf of the nation.
Thank you.
I'm going to continue on the theme of